Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 32 of season 2 of Gunners and Blues. My name is Sean Morgan. I am joined by Andrew Gump, and it is yet another week, another weekend done in the Premier League, and some shifting in the table. Not so much for Arsenal. This is the Arsenal centric episode for this week. Actually, you know what? Before we dive into that talk, Andrew, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Doing great. I just want to say a certain team shifted all the way to the top.
Hey, that's talk for next episode. You can shelve that shit right now. Okay, shove that right back, right fucking back.
I mean, you shifted a bit too, right?
I think we're 10th,
about
9th. I think.
no, you're 11th.
Am I 11th now? Oh, okay. I didn't
Hey,
see.
you're in the bottom half.
Hey, there we go.
You went up to there we go. You went up to ninth after the win, then Sunday results. Back down 11th, back where you belong, bottom half of the table.
Oh yeah, back where we belong. That's rich. Um, well, we are here to talk about the 0-0 draw against Brighton and kind of what some of our takeaways are from some of the individual performances, from the tactical decisions, and then what this kind of means going forward. I think it's actually a very interesting match to break down and look at some individual components, because I really think that the scoreline doesn't really tell the story about what happened, and I feel as though there were some promising aspects from this Arsenal side and some very frustrating ones that I think definitely need to be addressed sooner rather than later if this is going to be a successful season. So, I mean, obviously there aren't any goals to highlight, but what I want to do is I want to split up talking about our defensive backline, then talking about our midfield, and then our attack before going on to any other things. So let's actually go ahead and go with our backline first. So this is easily, I think, obviously Tomiyasu's worst game with us, but I actually think this is probably one of Tierney's worst games with us as well. And the way that Brighton, I think, really just abused us wide was a cause for concern, because normally that's not, especially down Tierney's side, that's really not something that we've seen too often. And I'm actually starting to get a little bit worried because I feel like Tierney has not really done nearly as well this season as we've seen, him perform. And it's kind of a pretty decent stretch of matches where he's not really offering us, I think, the same. Some of his crossing is a little subpar, and he seems as though he's getting physically outmatched in, games where you probably really wouldn't expect it. I don't think there's a single match I can highlight this season where I'm like, Tierney was our best player. I can't think of that at all. Whereas last season, there were multiple games where, like, Tierney was easily the best player in our shirt. So and I have a question for you. I know your answer is probably like, no, because it usually is. If, after the international break, if Tierney comes out and still continues to play flat, does Tavares get a run?
Well, actually, that was something I thought about, and I don't think you're going to cruise. I don't think you know either, actually. I don't think that Tavares plays for his national team.
Mm-hmm.
It is, in my opinion, it looks to me like Tierney maybe this toll of just having consistent injuries, not like terrible injuries, but, niggling injuries, seems to make him maybe a little less certain. And with Tavares being at the training pit, at the training ground with Arteta for most of this international break, like, once again, don't crucify me, Arsenal fans. I don't. Do you know who Tavares plays for? If he plays internationally at all, I don't know. I honestly have no idea. But if he
isn't he considered? I'm fairly certain he's considered Portuguese. Yeah, he's Portuguese.
Well, I don't know if he plays for the national team.
He only has 2 appearances for like the under-21s, and that was it.
Okay, so that means that he could probably find a way to get into the squad with Tierney having a poor run of form, and his chance, basically to work with the coach a little more intimate setting, right? There's not going to be that many players there. Most of Arsenal's players are internationals. very similar to the way that Marcus Alonso, got his chance at the beginning of the season. He was just with Tuchel for a large stretch of the preseason because the English players were still doing shit at the Euros. So no, actually, I'm not going to give you a no.
Oh, okay.
I gave you a yes.
Okay.
I do think if Tierney doesn't show some sort of change in form, because he hasn't been, in my opinion, he hasn't been good going either way, defensively or offensively. It's not that he's been unmistakably bad.
He's just been there's a bar that was set, and defensively he was never a stalwart, but offensively he brought so much down that left-hand side. And once you set the bar, if you're consistently performing underneath it, it's noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
So
I agree.
So let's flip flop sides. Let's talk about Tomiyasu, and I'm actually going to excuse Tomiyasu for a bit because I think he set his own personal bar pretty high coming in right off the bat, and I think it's a twofold thing. I mean, one, we really kind of sucked on that side to begin with. With our options there, playing Chambers, playing Cedric, playing Hector Bellerin, it didn't really work. So when Tomiyasu came in and he was actually defensively sound, it, I think, caught us a little bit by surprise. And this game, I think, definitely showcased maybe some growth opportunity in the league. One, he definitely wasn't prepared, I think, for that pitch and for the weather. There were multiple instances where it almost seemed like he was beat by a split second, and it wasn't that he slipped, but it almost was as if he was subconsciously thinking about not slipping, and so it made him lose a step or two. And I think that impacted just about everything that he did, from when he had the ball at his feet to when what's the Brighton fullback's name that basically rinsed him?
Cucurella.
Yeah, Cucurella, who had a monster game, right? Who had an absolute monster of a game, and was taking full advantage, I think, of a very hesitant Tomiyasu. I don't expect this to be the norm. And I think that this is something that, Tomiyasu is also a younger player, and this is an opportunity for him to, hey, you can't afford to do this at this level on this type of pitch in this country. You're going to get beat by people who have adapted to it. And he's going to see a lot of shitty weather and a lot of shitty pitches, over the course of the season, over the course of his career in England. So I think both of their performances were very subpar and made up for the fact that Ben White and Gabriel once again had a fantastic game.
Yes, yeah.
They were able to deflect so many shots and force Brighton to take shots at weird angles. I mean, you look at the stat sheet. Brighton had a ton of shots on target, had a ton of shots in general, but even though some of those shots were on target, the angles in which they were taken were so tight that they were just very, very low percentage. I'm actually curious. I haven't even looked up the XG numbers. XG Brighton.
It was about 0.37 to 1.4. Okay. 1.4 for Brighton. Yeah.
So you would think with the amount of shots that Brighton had that XG would probably be a little bit higher, but really I think it shows just how good Ben White and Gabriel were. Easily the best players on the pitch for us, I think, aside from Emile Smith-Rowe, which we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Yeah.
I
do think, just kind of chime in for a second, I do think Tomiyasu was not helped out by the fact that Saka just refused to track back at all. He was not giving him any help out wide. That's it. Cucurella basically had a free run on Tommy, who obviously didn't deal with it well. But it was interesting because you would imagine Saka would be willing to get back. I don't know if it was just getting caught up in the moment, the weather, or maybe that was a tactical decision. But it did surprise me how often Cucurella had a free run.
I feel like it was a combination of two things. One, I think it's fatigue. I think it's we're still seeing him grow as a young player, and I do feel like there's, up until recently, him moving to the right, we were talking about, is Saka going to get benched? He looks tired, he looks like he's struggling, and so I think this match kind of reminded us that maybe that is still a discussion to have. Now it's not like Pepe coming in was an improvement, but anytime we see a player like Saka and I say refusing to track back, but almost looking like he's focused on something else. I think it was a mental thing, and I do believe there may have been some tactical decision to try, because I mean Brighton's one of the best and heaviest pressing teams in the league. And so I feel like some of what Saka was doing was tactical, to potentially open up some passing lanes to help try and beat the press and position himself to take advantage if Brighton made a mistake, and they didn't. Right? And so that made it look like Saka really wasn't involved. And when he did get involved, it wasn't the best. And then he came off. It looks like the injury is not too, significant, by the way, from what I've read, anyhow. So hopefully, for his sake, he's able to maybe take a couple match break if need be, or at least come in, off the bench and, kind of rework into the squad if it's something that's, pressing. International break couldn't kind of come at a better time.
Yeah.
Even though he was called up, I can't imagine that if this is something significant that it's going to be if he's going to see any actual play time. Kind of the same thing happened.
You don't know Gareth Southgate.
Kind of the same thing with like Reece James.
I don't. No, he called him up. Was like, oh wait a minute, he's gonna be injured for 4 to 6 weeks, and then called Chilwell up instead. I don't like. That's one of those oopsies that you can't really cover up for. I don't know, man. Something about that guy Gareth Southgate.
Good old Gareth Southgate. By the way, if anybody is watching this episode on YouTube, if it looks like I'm sweating bullets, my air conditioning is out and it's like 85 degrees back here, and I can't have any fans on because otherwise my mic will pick up all of the background noise, so it'll sound like I'm talking in a wind tunnel. So I apologize if I look like a glistening pumpkin right now. And if you aren't watching this on YouTube, well then hey, if you want to see me as a glistening pumpkin, then you've got your option. But let's talk about the midfield and the attack, because I thought Lokonga had an okay game. It wasn't outstanding by any stretch. Partey had, I would say probably a bottom 3 performance, wearing an Arsenal shirt, and I feel like a lot of that also had to do with how much we were getting rinsed on the wings, and it may have bled into the confidence a bit. I think of that entire, like, our defensive solidity. And really, there weren't a whole lot of outlets. Brighton was able to do a pretty good job at limiting our passing lanes. And they have such an intense and disciplined press that, it was very easy to shut us down. And I think that's one of those things when you look at our main passing outlets out the back. We have Ramsdale, we have White, and we have Partey. Everybody else is basically going to be moving the ball either up the pitch, with the ball at their feet, or looking, for the occasional like pass to the midfield with our talking about like Tomiyasu and Tierney. So when you're able to go through and I think shut down any of the ball movement on the wings, which Brighton was able to do effectively, it does make Partey a little bit easier to shut down. And by a little bit easier, I mean quite easy. So a lot of the passes you saw from Ramsdale had a good game. He had once again, solid. He had that one mistake early on, but I mean, it was pouring rain. The ball is slick. Thankfully nothing bad happened as a result of it.
I think in the end, actually, there was a foul called on Duffy as well.
Oh, well, then it wouldn't even. Yeah,
it wouldn't.
I mean, you see keepers have to deal with that all the time, right? It's not something that's going to be an atypical issue. So for me, Ramsdale had a fine performance. He did have to ping a lot of balls long, and I think a lot of that had to do with how abused Partey was during this match and how much we struggled to bring the ball up on the wings. But again, I think Lokonga had a fine performance.
Yeah.
So
I have a question on Odegaard, actually.
That's what I was about to get to talk about with the attack. But he's technically attacking midfielder. So what was your question?
Well, I mean, I just wondered, did you think maybe he wasn't completely prepared for that sort of press in that game? He seemed to, I don't know, kind of suffer with just a completely decreased amount of time. Say that you got against Tottenham and Norwich, Burnley. did you think that's anything that you may be slightly concerned about? Going in against better teams that will press, or do you just think it was just a kind of a one-off?
I think it's a little bit of column A and column B. There is cause for concern. And I think there are a lot of circumstances that went against Odegaard here. One, that was probably one of the, I would say, most brutal presses that he's dealt with in his career. Legitimately, that was that is probably not a style that he's seen, and definitely not in weather conditions that he's seen. So I feel like there were so many things working against him that it made him look much worse than he otherwise would. But that is not excusing him. It is simply explaining a reason as to why there were pitfalls. And there are opportunities to work on it. There are opportunities to drill and training to deal with a press like this. There are really, I think, only like a handful of other teams that are able to do this the way that Brighton does. And there are teams that have actually been able to give us the business when we play them. I mean, like I said, Liverpool is one of those that is also able to do that pretty effectively. And, we always look very, very poor against them. So I am worried, when we end up playing Liverpool here soon, that might be a very similar struggle that we see. So hopefully it's something that can be trained out of him and an experience thing that he can develop. That said, I do believe it rattled him. And I think that once he was rattled, that he was not able to get that, to shake that mentality. This is where I missed Granit Xhaka. Okay? No, you laugh, but legitimately, even though Xhaka sometimes lets his temper get the best of him, our squad is so young, and Aubameyang is generally not a very vocal captain.
Yeah.
That I feel like, especially, our fullbacks and I think our midfield could have used a on-pitch leader like Granit Xhaka to calm them down. Xhaka's been playing in this league for a long time, and he's used to that type of weather. What do you think? Do you?
Yeah, I mean, no. The only reason I laughed is you don't hear Arsenal fans say that too often. Let's be honest, right?
I mean, it's fair, right? It's fair.
Yeah.
It's just maybe it's less. I miss Granit Xhaka and more. Why don't
you need leaders?
We need
badly.
a vocal leader, right?
Yeah.
And so let's talk about our attacking play. Obviously, Emile Smith-Rowe was the only one who looked like he gave a shit out there, and sometimes it's almost par for the course, right? There are matches where it seems like our attack disappears, but Emile Smith-Rowe is always giving, as much as he can out there on the pitch and it's because, again, he's a player who likes the ball at his feet and is looking to make good runs and, find space where space is sometimes a premium. And that means when our attack is struggling, he looks better because of it, just in comparison. I know a lot of pundits came out, a lot of analysts came out and said, why didn't we start Lacazette instead of Aubameyang? Because of, having that hold-up play and being able to potentially, deal with what it was that Brighton was throwing at us defensively. And I completely agree. And, I mean, I've talked about it before that there are matches where I want to see Lacazette. The problem, I think, that Arteta has had and continues to have, he's had pretty much his entire tenure, is he doesn't seem to know when Aubameyang or Lacazette need to be played. And he simply goes with whatever feels like the hottest foot. And I wonder, what the relationship dynamic is there between the three of them. Because I feel like there are, even though Aubameyang, is 5 goals in 6 games, it's still a matter of sometimes he looks like he is the wrong fit in that particular system or whatever tactic, that Arteta is trying to implement. And I think that there's a definite need for somebody who is a little more dynamic of a striker and potentially a little bit better at, maybe a little bit bulkier. I think it's almost time for us to get just a big old target man, right? Just to have as an option. And
I completely agree.
Because we really don't have that. Lacazette is a small guy. Eddie Nketiah is a smaller guy. Balogun looks like he's a taller dude, but he's still not. He hasn't bulked up yet, right? He needs to go through that Saka-esque bulk up. I mean, you've seen Saka over the last 3 years basically go from a toddler to actually looking like he's a man.
All right.
And so
time to raid Burnley.
Yeah.
Time to raid Burnley at January.
I know, right? But it doesn't have to be like the biggest, basically. I almost, there are games like this where I almost miss Olivier Giroud, right? Because I mean, there are times where
who doesn't miss Olivier Giroud? First and foremost, everybody misses Olivier Giroud, bro. Come on.
But no, I think we would have been able to utilize a player like that, and it's just tough because I feel like there are so many bright spots in the squad, but definitely things that Arteta, I imagine, wishes he had in his toolkit.
Yeah.
He's God, I almost made a Yu-Gi-Oh reference. Never mind. I was almost going to make a Warrior Toolbox reference.
Hey, the best, the most skilled deck.
Skilled deck. But no, I. This is a young team.
Yeah.
This is a young team, and this is a team that's going to grow from this match. I am not disappointed in the result. While I wish that it was 3 points. I think that, one, I'm going to give Brighton more credit now than I did at the beginning of the season. They are a good side, and they deserve to be where they are. They're going to have some struggles this season, but they've earned every bit of where they are right now.
Oh yeah.
And for us to, I think, play as well as some of our individual players did when team cohesion was low. Is a positive takeaway, because there are times where I guarantee you, with different personnel in specific spots, this squad we would have gone down, a goal, 2 goals potentially. Our center back pairing could have been worse and could have given Brighton some more shot opportunities that they otherwise wouldn't have had. We could have even looked more aimless in attack if Emile Smith-Rowe wasn't making things happen. There's just so many little things. Like, Leno is a good shot stopper, but I feel like there are just little things that Ramsdale does in distribution, especially in dealing with the press that Brighton Leno probably would have been forced into a mistake. And this episode would have been much more frustrating than it is. So is it the ideal result? No.
Yeah.
But this is a young squad. This squad has a lot of, players who have not had to play in circumstances and situations like this. Specifically, I think, Odegaard, Partey, and Tomiyasu. And now they have. And this is an opportunity to build from it on a, okay result. So that's kind of my overall takeaway. Like I said, I wish I could be happier. But I'm definitely glad I'm not as frustrated.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it wasn't like, like you said, it wasn't a terrible result if you go there. But I do think, if I'm an Arsenal fan, I'm a little bit irritated that I basically played this game, and if you take the nameplates off, I think you're looking, I would have said, take the nameplates off, take the jerseys off. I would have said that was 100% Arsenal playing as Brighton and vice versa. And that was my take on it. It's not that you guys are terrible, but I think there was one team making most of the action. There was one team that looked to have a threat. There's one team that, maybe seemed to care just a little bit more. And if you're looking at Brighton, in my opinion, the way that I did from the beginning of the season, this is basically a team that is going to be challenging for Europa League, maybe Europa Conference, and it's kind of a rival. If we're being perfectly honest, it's a rival for Arsenal. So, like I said, it wasn't a terrible performance in that, you got the point. It was away from home. You didn't play particularly well, but it was maybe, in my opinion, slightly more concerning that you looked discernibly second best against a team that you're probably going to think of as competition this season.
And I think that's fair. And to not gloss over it too much. Like I said, there are cause for concern in like certain key areas.
Yeah.
and they all have explainable reasons. I think that's the important takeaway for me, right? Is that in a young team, you want to look for opportunities for growth, opportunities to build up solidity. And if you don't have a way of identifying that, if it looks like there are just gaps that cannot be filled by the personnel that you have, that's when, fans are calling for, we need to bring in this player, we need to bring in that player. What you're not hearing from Arsenal fans is we need to replace Odegaard, we need to replace Partey, we need to replace Tomiyasu, we need to replace, this guy, we need to replace that guy, we need to do this, we need to do that. It's not about that. It's about, what, this is a team that needs to go through this adversity, and will be better off because of it. It's to borrow, and I'm probably not going to get the quote right, but Arsene Wenger had a quote about everybody wants to start young players until you start losing points, right? Yeah. It's this is a situation where we are going to lose points this season on the back of inexperience. This is a shining example of that. We lost due to inexperience. Brighton was able to capitalize where they needed to capitalize. They played their match on their turf in front of their fans in their, in that style of weather, and they did as well as they could without finding the back of the net. And I think individual players on our side did as well as they could to keep that from happening. But there are limitations, and we saw those limitations. So I'm hoping going forward that Arteta is able to identify where they need to grow and specifically how. Because identifying where is pretty easy, but the how is where a good manager is going to come in and show improvement. And everybody, for as maligned as Arteta is from, I think, a lot of, people in, like in the fan base and in other fan bases and whatnot, all of the players believe in him. Like, there is something that he must do, like, I think, with each player that, really sells his style of football and his style of coaching and managing and training. So if he's able to find that...
He also just got rid of everyone that didn't agree.
I mean, that's fair, right? But I mean, that's a discussion for, another pod. But I mean, actually, I think we talked a little bit about that last season. Anyway, it's I think that he's going to be able to at least get them on the right path to growth. Is it ultimately going to work? Well, we have a lot of football yet to be played.
Yeah, I get it.
Well, that's actually going to be it. So because it's international break, we are not going to have a Thursday episode to preview anything. So we will take a nice little hiatus, and we will come back and then talk about what's going to happen after break. Next episode is going to be our Chelsea-centric episode for the beginning of the week. So if you are, if you like just listening to us talk, look forward to that one coming out here shortly. If you're more of an Arsenal person, then you'll have to wait a little while longer. As always, thank you, Particle Dogs. Great intro and outro tunes. And hope everybody is following us on our respective social media platforms. Everything on our Linktree, linktr.ee/GunnersBlues. Facebook was down for a huge portion of the day today, so it's back up. We'll be able to throw some stuff on Facebook if you follow us there. So, any final thoughts before we call it an episode?
No, just excited to record about some winners. You know what I mean?
All right, we are ending this episode. on behalf of the Blue Tennessean, my name is Sean. We are Gunners Blues. Have a good one, everybody.
See you guys.